And if the love you attract has nothing to do with luck or chance, and if every person who enters your emotional life is there for a reason deeper than you imagine, Carl Jung did not see love as a mere coincidence between two beings. For him, the love that you attract, and especially the love that confuses you, that hurts you, or that obsesses you, is a psychic mirror. Not just any mirror, but a mirror that shows you parts of yourself that you do not want to look at, that you have repressed, or that you have not yet integrated. That is how the shadow works, that key concept in Jungian psychology. Everything that you do not recognize in yourself ends up being projected onto others, and not just onto anyone, but precisely onto those who make you feel intense emotions that awaken your insecurities, provoke your need to control, or push you to escape, because the love that comes when you least expect it often arrives disguised as an opportunity, but in reality, it is a call from the unconscious, a sort of uncomfortable teacher that does not speak with words, but with reactions, wounds, and repeated patterns. When someone enters your life and seems to touch exactly the place where it hurts the most, they are not destroying you. They are pointing out something that was already there, something you had not wanted to see. Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in the realm of love, that darkness often manifests as dependency, fear of abandonment, need for validation, or attraction to emotionally unavailable people. It is not a coincidence that you fall in love with someone who does not choose you. It is not by chance that you keep falling into relationships that leave you empty. There is a pattern there, and that pattern is not broken with more external love, but with more internal awareness. Because love does not resolve your voids, it reveals them. Imagine that every person you have loved represents a part of you, not in the literal sense, but symbolically. The cold person who does not respond to you emotionally may be reflecting your own difficulty in accepting your vulnerability. The person who controls you might be the mirror of your own need to control what you feel. Even that person who seemed perfect and then betrayed you might be showing you a part of yourself that idealizes, that deposits too much in the other, that has not yet learned to sustain itself without getting lost. You do not attract these people as punishment or because of karma. You attract them because they are on the same emotional, energetic, and psychic level as certain unresolved parts of your history. Relationships are not only effective connections, they are scenarios in which your unconscious can speak, and it does so loudly. That is why, when a relationship shakes you, do not first ask, "Why did they do this to me?" Instead, ask, "Why did I allow this? What part of me was seeking this experience? What is this wound trying to tell me?" It is not easy to look inward. It is much more comfortable to blame the other, to label them as narcissistic, evasive, or selfish. But as long as you continue placing all the responsibility outside, you will continue repeating the same type of bond time and time again. The face will change, the name will change, but the script will remain the same, because the love you have not healed will be lived again until you learn what it has to teach you. Jung understood that each relationship is also an initiatory path. Not all people are meant to stay, but all come to show you something. Some show you what you deserve, others show you what you still tolerate, some elevate you, while others break you. But even in pain there is wisdom. Even in chaos, there are messages from the soul. And that is what most do not want to see. Behind every intense attraction, every romantic obsession, there is an echo of your personal history crying out to be heard. Sometimes you cling to someone not because you truly love them, but because your wound recognizes them. Not because they are your destiny, but because they are a fragment of your shadow that has taken on a human form, and instead of confronting it, you romanticize it, justify it, idealize it. When someone activates your deepest fears, do not immediately flee. Observe, feel, listen to what your body reacts with. It tenses, it contracts, it becomes desperate. It needs the other to constantly calm it down. All that does not speak about the other. It speaks about you. And here lies the paradox. The more deeply you know yourself, the more the type of love you attract changes. Not because magically better people appear, but because you no longer resonate with what you once called love, which was actually lack. You will no longer confuse intensity with connection, control with commitment, or anxiety with desire. You will learn to see beyond appearances, and above all, you will learn to say no when before you remained silent out of fear of losing. But to reach that place, you must traverse the dark forest of self-knowledge. You must have the courage to look back without playing the victim, to look inward without judgment, and forward without illusions, because true love, the love that is not based on need or dependency, is not found. It is built within you. And only when you learn to love your broken parts will you stop looking outside for someone to fix them. There is a silent, almost imperceptible moment in which something within you chooses without you noticing, chooses whom to look at with interest, to whom to give yourself emotionally, to whom to open the door of your inner world. And it is not your conscious self that makes that choice. It is that older part that has been accumulating memories, unresolved pains, inherited beliefs, and hidden expectations since long before you even knew what it was to love. That is why Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you will call it destiny. It is brutal because it places the responsibility for our effective choices exactly where we do not want to see it, in ourselves. Most believe they fall in love by affinity, by coincidences, or by blind destiny. But the truth is that many times we fall in love with what we lack, with what we secretly desire to be, or with what we are afraid to face. We fall in love with the freedom that we do not grant ourselves, with the power we do not acknowledge in us, with the abandonment we have already experienced, with the wound we never closed. The other appears as a living symbol of something unresolved, and what we call love is in reality a dance between lacks that attract one another, a dance where every step, every gesture, every silence has a hidden emotional significance. You are attracted by their security because you doubt yourself, attracted by their independence because you abandon yourself, attracted by their distance because within you there is an untold story that taught you that love is begged rather than received with dignity. There are people who enter your life as if they had been waiting for that moment for years, people who seem to read your soul, who activate your most intense emotions, who become a sort of vital necessity. But what you do not see at first is that this intensity is not always love. Sometimes it is trauma in disguise. Sometimes it is your nervous system recognizing a familiar pattern. Even when it hurts, it often feels like home, because deep inside what you seek is not another person. It is an emotional experience that your body learned from a very early age. If you learned that love was unpredictable, you will run toward the unstable. If you learned that love hurt, you will cling to the one who hurts you the most. And all this happens without you knowing, because it is not decided by you. It is decided by your history. And here is where the inner work becomes indispensable. It is not about avoiding love or shutting yourself off emotionally. It is about recognizing which part of you is choosing whom to love. Is it your adult, conscious self that knows what it deserves and respects itself? Or is it your wounded child that still wants someone to save it, to see it, to finally choose it? When it is the child who chooses, love becomes a plea. When it is the adult, love becomes a choice, not a necessity. But to reach that level of awareness, you must first go through all your masks. You must look at your attachments with brutal honesty. You must accept that many times the other was not cruel. It was simply placed on a pedestal that did not deserve it. It is very difficult to admit that you were the one who idealized, who ignored the signs, who settled for crumbs, who confused attention with love. But it is also liberating, because when you accept your part in the story, you regain the power you had given away. You stop seeing love as something that happens to you and begin to see it as something that you too build, allow, mold. And that changes everything. It changes the kind of conversations you have, the boundaries you set, the way you look at the other. You no longer need constant validation. You no longer seek for the other to fix you. You become an emotionally solid space. And from there, love ceases to be a roller coaster and becomes a bridge. But this does not mean that love becomes less intense. On the contrary, it becomes more real, more honest, more human, because it is no longer born of fear, but of the encounter of mutual recognition between two people who do not need each other to survive, but who choose to share the journey. And that is only possible when you stop attracting from the wound and begin vibrating from healing. The quality of the love you receive is deeply related to the quality of the relationship you have with yourself, your boundaries, your self-image, your ability to be alone without feeling empty. All of this is reflected in the way love comes to you. Jung knew it. Love is not blind. It is deeply revealing. It does not come to fill gaps. It comes to expose them. It does not come to give you answers, but to show you the questions you have been avoiding for years. And it is there that many flee because loving consciously requires emotional maturity, requires letting go of the fantasy that someone else will come to complete you, requires setting aside naive romanticism to embrace a deeper truth. That true love begins where need ends. When you are capable of sustaining yourself entirely, only then can you open yourself to a love that is not a repetition of your voids, but an expansion of your being. Sometimes we believe that love is luck, a coincidence, a gift of destiny. But Jung invites us to look beyond that charming surface. He tells us with elegant bluntness that the love we attract is a mirror that reflects not what we want, but what we are in our deepest self. And this, though poetic, is unsettling because if the love you attract is dishonest, absent, abusive, or unstable, what does that say about you? Not in terms of guilt, but in terms of awareness, because no one chooses to be hurt, but many unconsciously choose someone who already knows how to hurt, because it feels familiar, because, even if it hurts to admit it, it fits with an internal narrative you have been reproducing for years. When you begin to observe the patterns of your relationships, you notice echoes, repetitions, similar figures with different faces, situations that, although they change in setting, return to the same emotional place. And in that place, that invisible space between desire and pain, is where the true root of what you attract lies. You attract what you believe you deserve, even if you are not consciously aware of that belief. You attract from the energy you emanate when you are alone, from how you speak to yourself when no one is listening, from how you manage your void, from your level of self-acceptance. The other, in reality, only responds to the call you make without words. That is why there are people who, without realizing it, become magnets for unbalanced relationships. Not because they seek them, but because they do not know themselves well enough to protect themselves from what is not good for them. And there is the key. The love you attract reveals your level of self-knowledge. It is not about beauty or intelligence, not even about kindness. It is about your emotional vibration, about what your unconscious allows and normalizes, about the stories you carry inside that have not yet been told out loud. Love, then, is not just a bond with another. It is a tool for revelation, a way in which life shows you your own boundaries. The other becomes a scenario where your wounds make their appearance. And that is why so often we love with fear, urgency, dependency, because we do not love from fullness, but from lack, from the illusion that the other will come to close a wound that we cannot even name. But love cannot heal what you are not willing to look at. The most it can do is shake you, show you, expose you, and then you decide if you want to use that mirror or break it. There is a very common idea that love justifies everything, that if it hurts, it is because it is deep, that if it consumes you, it is because it is real. But Jung did not see it that way. For him, authentic love does not fragment you. It integrates you. It does not leave you in ruins. It propels you toward your wholeness. And that wholeness involves seeing not only your light, but also your shadow, your jealousy, your fears, your need for control, your insecurities, because love brings to the surface not only the best of you, but also what you had hidden. And that, instead of being a tragedy, can become an opportunity, the opportunity to transform the unconscious into the conscious, to turn the bond into a path, to use the relationship not as a refuge, but as a school. But that demands courage, because when you realize that the love you attract is not an accident, but a reflection, you can no longer keep blaming the other. You can no longer keep running away from yourself. You have to stop and look within. What part of you chose to stay where it was unseen? What part of you felt comfortable in absence? What part of you believed it did not deserve more? These questions are not easy, but they are necessary because the answer is not out there. It was never out there. And as long as you do not do that inner work, you will continue attracting the same type of love over and over again. The names will change, the bodies, the promises, but the background will remain the same because the script remains intact. And only you can rewrite it, not with empty affirmations or superficial self-help, but with a sincere and deep exploration of your emotional history, your childhood, your primary bonds, your beliefs about love. Because that is where everything is formed, that is where the pattern begins. And until you return to that origin, you will keep repeating the same melody, even if you change the song. The love you attract is not a coincidence. It is a letter written by your unconscious and sent to the universe without you knowing. Every time you relate, you are revealing something about yourself, something that perhaps you did not want to see, something that needs to be loved. Yes, but first for you, because no one can give you a love that you yourself deny. No one can respect you if you do not place yourself where you deserve to be. No one can save you from what you are not willing to leave behind. Love is not magic. It is revelation. It is a subtle and certain mirror, and when you finally learn to look at yourself without fear, the mirror no longer reflects lack. It reflects presence. It reflects truth. There is something deeply revealing in observing how someone loves when they are not trying to impress, when the game of seduction is over and only what is authentic, raw, and inevitable remains. It is at that exact point where love stops being a promise and becomes a daily act, where the true emotional structure of the individual is exposed. Jung understood that there is no more direct way to know a person's soul than through the type of love they are capable of sustaining, because it is not only about whom you choose to love, but about how you love, from where you love, and what you are willing to face within yourself for that love. Many seek in love an escape, a way not to face their void, their insecurity, that inner voice that constantly tells them they are not enough. And then they project onto the other an idealized image, a savior figure that will come to fill all the gaps. But that projection, as Jung warned, is not true love. It is an illusion, a shadow disguised as desire. Because when you love someone not for who they are, but for what they represent to you, in reality, you are not loving. You are using them. And that way of bonding, although socially accepted, always ends in disenchantment because no human being can indefinitely bear the weight of being someone else's salvation. Here appears another great truth. The love you attract does not depend on what you say you want, but on what your unconscious needs to resolve. You attract someone who, without knowing it, fits perfectly with your unhealed wounds, and many times that means you are attracted to someone emotionally unavailable because you yourself have learned to protect yourself by not fully connecting, or that you fall in love with someone who does not choose you because, on some deep level, you do not choose yourself either. Love thus becomes a symbolic battleground where your desires and your traumas, your longing for connection, and your fear of losing control confront each other. When a person is at peace with themselves, the way they love changes. They no longer seek validation, nor do they need to dominate or allow themselves to be dominated. They love from freedom rather than from need. They do not cling, do not manipulate, do not constantly demand proof of love, because they understand that love is not a power struggle, but an encounter between two complete worlds, not two broken halves. And that is why, as you work more on yourself, the type of love you attract changes. You stop searching for broken mirrors in which to reflect your pain and begin to resonate with those who walk with their shadow in plain view rather than hidden. The process is not linear. Sometimes you think you have healed and then fall back into the same patterns because the unconscious does not release its secrets so easily. It protects itself, hides them, sets tests for you, and every relationship you live becomes an opportunity to see more clearly, to ask yourself not only what you seek in the other, but what you are denying yourself. There is no bond more dangerous than one based on the hope that the other will come to fix your story. That hope, although sweet, is poisonous because it turns love into a debt, and the love born from debt ends up being an act of survival rather than of fulfillment. Jung spoke of individuation as the path toward becoming whole, a process in which you reconcile with all your parts, those you show and those you hide, even from yourself, and love plays an essential role in that journey. Not because it is the destination, but because it is the ground where the unintegrated parts surface. 2. Love makes you vulnerable. It forces you to lower your defenses, to let someone see your chaos, and in that emotional nakedness appears what has not yet healed. It is no coincidence that the people most avoidant of love are those who most fear facing themselves, because deep down they know, even if they do not say it, that to truly love is to allow your soul to be seen, not your ego, not your mask. That is why when you analyze the love you attract, you are engaging in an exercise of deep self-knowledge. You are observing yourself in the most honest mirror, and even though it may hurt, it can also liberate you because it shows you what you did not know resided within you, confronting you with your limits, your contradictions, your hidden attachments, but also giving you the opportunity to choose differently, to heal, to break the cycle. Because once you see the pattern, you can no longer feign blindness. You have the power, even if not always the courage, to choose another path. And that is when love ceases to be chance and becomes a conscious act. You no longer love from hunger, but from abundance. You no longer choose from emptiness, but from clarity. You no longer attract to fill a void, but to share your fullness. But to reach that, you must go through the fire, through the discomfort of looking within, through the courage to acknowledge that you too have hurt, that you too have chosen wrongly, that you too have allowed more than you deserved, because the love you attract is not just a story with someone else. It is the silent language with which your soul speaks about yourself. It is easy to say that we deserve great, mature, conscious, and deep love. We repeat it like a mantra. We secretly desire it. We visualize it as if it were to arrive by magic. But the question Jung would invite you to ask is not what type of love you desire, but what type of love you are capable of sustaining. Because attracting something is only part of the process. What is truly challenging is sustaining it, facing what it awakens in you, and not sabotaging it the moment it begins to touch fibers you would rather keep asleep. What many call true love is nothing more than the reflection of a relationship where both have done the necessary inner work so as not to use the other as an extension of their lack. Sometimes the love you attract is intense but not healthy. It consumes you, drags you, obsesses you, and even if you confuse it with passion or intensity, it is still a form of suffering disguised as connection. Jung explained that these intense relationships are often the result of a powerful projection of the anima or animus, internal figures that represent the unconscious feminine or masculine side of our psyche. When we meet someone who embodies these archetypal figures, we feel an overwhelming, almost magical attraction. But we are not really seeing the other. We are seeing a part of ourselves projected outward. We fall in love with an image we ourselves have built, not with the real person. And when that image inevitably crumbles, we are devastated, not by the loss of the other, but by the disillusionment of the fantasy. That is why so often, when someone distances themselves or when a relationship ends, we feel that something that belonged to us has been taken away. Not because that person truly belonged to us, but because we had assigned to them an emotional role we considered vital. And what hurts is not so much their departure, but having to face once again what that person was hiding within us. Loneliness, fear, insecurity. Jung said it bluntly. What you do not make conscious becomes your destiny. And when it comes to love, that destiny appears as a cycle. Attraction, euphoria, disappointment, emptiness, repeated infinitely until you stop, until you cease looking outward for answers and turn your gaze inward. That is where everything begins, because when you heal, your energy changes, and with it, the type of people you allow into your life changes. You no longer attract from lack, but from emotional abundance, and that is felt, noticed, and lived differently. But there is no instant magic. There is a process. There are nights of doubt, uncomfortable solitude, relapses, nostalgia for what was. And all of that is also part of the journey. Because you cannot truly love without facing your own abyss. You cannot hold others if you have not learned to hold yourself. You cannot say, "I choose you from freedom," if before you did not choose yourself with all your lights and shadows, your wounds and your power. And when that day comes, you do not need love to be perfect. You need it to be real, full of truth, reciprocity, and space to be, without masks or games. And for that to be possible, you must first shed the masks you used in order to be loved. Because love is not a stage on which you perform a role. It is a temple where you meet another human being willing to see you and allow themselves to be seen. The most revealing aspect of love is not what the other does or fails to do, but what it awakens in you, what it activates, what it discomforts, what it transforms. That is why love is a gateway to the deepest parts of your psyche. And if you cross that gateway with your eyes open, you will discover that every relationship was a message, a teacher, a mirror. Some showed you your shadow, others your light, but all brought you a little closer to yourself, and that perhaps is the highest purpose of love. In the end, it is not about how many times your heart was broken, but about how many times you returned to yourself, how many times you decided not to close off, how many times you chose to keep loving without losing yourself. And that is only possible when you understand that the love you attract is not a coincidence. It is an echo of your internal state, the consequence of your beliefs, your wounds, your emotional history, and also of your level of awareness. The love you attract reveals who you are, but it can also reveal into whom you are willing to become, because every relationship, no matter how painful, has the potential to push you toward a more authentic, freer, awakened version of yourself. And when you choose to take that path, something within you changes forever. Love is one of the most mysterious forces of the human being. It is not a matter of choosing whom you love with logic, nor is it measured by reason. It is a current that arises from a place that is older, more primitive, more intimate. And Carl Jung understood that this force not only connects two people but also exposes the most hidden parts of the soul. There is no deep bond without transformation, and every time you give of yourself, you are opening a door to something much greater than yourself. There are those who enter your life with a sweetness that disarms, but also with a surgical precision that touches exactly your most deeply rooted insecurities. It is not a coincidence. It is synchronicity. It is the symbolic language of the unconscious, showing you that there is still work to be done. Perhaps you have wondered why you always end up with people who are emotionally unavailable, or why you are afraid when someone loves you unconditionally. And although it might seem unfair, the answer is not in the other, but in what you carry within. Jung spoke of the anima and the animus as the internal representations of the feminine and masculine soul within each individual. These figures, built by experience and culture, profoundly influence the type of partner you attract. It is not only about preferences or compatibility, it is about an unconscious projection. You see in the other what is missing in you. You idealize, you dream, you create an image, and then you suffer when that image falls apart because it was never real. It was a part of you that asked to be recognized, and it is in that recognition that the true journey begins. Love ceases to be a battleground or an urgent necessity and becomes a practice of self-knowledge. You ask yourself, why do I seek validation outside of me? Why do I confuse intensity with love? Why do I fear being seen just as I am? And in each answer lies a seed of liberation. Not because the pain disappears, but because it stops controlling you. Because you no longer need the other to fill your void. You recognize it, embrace it, and stop fearing it. But this awakening is not easy. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom in a relationship to see clearly. Sometimes you need to feel abandonment, betrayal, indifference to realize that you have been abandoning yourself all along. And although that hurts, it can also be the turning point that changes everything. Because the love you deserve does not demand that you sacrifice yourself, that you hide, or that you break yourself to fit in. The love you deserve begins when you stop begging for what you should have received from the start: respect, presence, truth. Jung insisted that the most terrifying thing is not facing the other but facing oneself, and that is exactly what authentic love provokes. It puts you in front of a mirror. It forces you to see your contradictions, your open wounds, your fears camouflaged as pride. But it also shows you your infinite capacity to rebuild yourself. Because if you were able to love from pain, imagine what you could love from awareness. Then you start to look back and understand that every person who passed through your life left something important: a lesson, a reflection, a challenge. Some taught you boundaries, others tenderness. Some awakened you, others destroyed you so that you could be reborn. And that, too, is love, even if it does not seem that way, because it pushed you to know yourself, to care for yourself, to listen to yourself. It brought you back to yourself, and when you return to yourself, love changes. Suddenly, you no longer need to convince anyone to stay. You no longer settle for crumbs. You are no longer attracted to drama, because something within you has matured. You have touched your emotional core, and from there, you can build something solid, not perfect, but real, with presence, with honesty, with the capacity to say, this is me and this is not. And that radically transforms what you attract. Because when you choose yourself, the world begins to reflect that choice. You no longer seek an intensity that consumes you, but a connection that elevates you. You no longer idealize, observe, or chase. You align. And so love becomes a sacred space, not of perfection, but of truth, where you can be yourself without fear, without masks, without needing to prove anything. A love that does not demand from you but supports you. A love that does not break you but builds you. And if you ever doubt whether you will succeed, remember this: you are already doing it by looking inward, by questioning yourself, by seeking answers in the depths. You are walking, and you are not alone. Millions of souls are on the same journey, stumbling, awakening, and starting over. And that too is love, recognizing ourselves in the other even when we do not fully understand, even when it hurts. So thank you for coming this far. Thank you for allowing yourself to feel, to reflect, to connect. If this video spoke to your heart, if something within you resonated with these words, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so we can continue deepening these topics together. And if you believe this can help someone else, do not hesitate to like and share it, because you never know whom you might touch with a single word. See you in the next video.